So, where did we leave off? Oh, right. Last time on FLY8MA Alpha, we headed up to Fairbanks and started cutting the wings off of the DC-6 so we could get it ready for transport here to Big Lake. We got the wing tips removed. We've got the vertical stabilizer removed from the aircraft. Scored the wings and successfully removed one of the wings, removed the right wing very nicely. And where we left off was trying to very delicately remove this left wing. Well, it turns out those two tiny little pipes were taking quite a bit of load, because once I cut through those, you could hear the popping and cracking and everything else failing, and yeah, it went. We got a little bit of sheet metal work to do there on the #1 engine firewall, unfortunately, but all things considered, not that big a deal. Same thing on this side, a little bit more wiggling, picking it up, setting it down, opening up those spaces, getting in there with the grinder. I got the bright idea to finally not be reaching my arm up inside there with that grinder. Went ahead and attached it with a little Titan strap to a chunk of wood so I could get my, limbs further away from the razor sharp metal that was going to pop and break and swing around when it did finally break free. We got that wing off, and man, it was time to go to lunch and celebrate before we hit the road, because that was a huge accomplishment. This whole gigantic fuselage is now on the trailer, ready for transport. We're taking that gooseneck trailer home with the vertical and the wingtips on it, and we'll be coming back for one more time to oversee the final strapping and chaining down of the fuselage and the final loading of those two inboard wing sections. Those two inboard wing sections actually turned out to cost more to move than the entire aircraft fuselage due to the width of them. They were actually over 16 feet from the front of the firewall to the trailing edge. There's just no way about it. They're so big and awkward and heavy. When the day for the big move finally rolled around the next week, well, we figured, hey, super easy, just load up these two inboard sections of the wings onto a lowboy, put some final straps on the fuselage. How hard could it really be? Had the help of the truck drivers loading up those inboard wing sections. Oh, and yeah, I guess it could be a little hard when straps and stuff are breaking, but super patient guys, really cool to see. Obviously, in aviation, you expect people to have good CRM and be patient and not get flustered easily, good qualities on a pilot. Well, really, that held true with working with all these guys here, moving the fuselage, moving the wings. Super patient guys, because it was not exactly the easiest task at hand. But finally, watching that fuselage pull out of there was a pretty big relief, and at the same time pretty big stressor, because it was creaking and groaning and making all sorts of noise as that foam insulation underneath it was kind of cracking and getting squished as that thing rolled around. Honestly, at that point it was about 50-50 shot if that thing was going to stay attached to the trailer, but luckily once I actually saw the thing out on the highway and caught up with them, seeing the thing go 40-50 miles an hour down the highway, it was taking the bumps pretty well and was feeling a lot better at that point, but still had over 300 miles to take this thing all the way down to Big Lake. A real, true, crazy sight to see this thing going down the road, just how much of the highway it took up, how long it was, and how it behaved, driving across the lanes, with all the pilot cars stopping oncoming traffic so that we could be using more than one lane at a time. It was actually 14 feet wide when it was finally going down the road. That was the narrowest we could get it, and way over 100 feet long with the whole rig. So pretty big, sitting at about 17 foot tall, going under the bridges here. Room to spare, I guess, but yeah, 17 feet's pretty darn tall. The deck on that trailer, 5 feet tall, and that made it a little bit tippy looking, to be honest. But later on that evening, they pulled into the property. One of the hardest parts was just making that 90-degree turn off of our little side street here, off of Hawk Lane, into the property. And once they were able to make that, it was pretty smooth sailing from there. Just had to get it backed up into the space where it was finally going to be sitting for the winter, and pretty wet, pretty muddy. Ground had been freezing and thawing, and so we actually ended up having to help the truck and trailer back into place using the excavator there, because it was just kind of sliding around on us. And again, these guys, super cool, super patient. Plenty of reasons why they could have been annoyed, aggravated after a big long day of moving this thing, and they were still very calm, collected, relaxed, getting it right into the exact final spot that we wanted it to be able to work on it and finish out the build throughout this winter. Truly appreciate them and really appreciate working with good, positive people rather than people that are just kind of have a crap attitude because, well, yeah, it was a really long day and it was a pretty stressful, tough move to do. So we got the tractor unhooked from the trailer and it was there. I mean, we had our DC-6 on the property and that was another huge accomplishment, huge step in the process. Of course, one more gigantic step was getting this, well, I don't know, 15, 20, 30,000 pound, we have no idea how much it weighs, tube off of the trailer itself. Figured it was about 20,000 pounds or so is what we were kind of guessing, the way it was sitting there. Called over the neighbor who had a crane, luckily, in his backyard. Really helpful to have neighbors that are handy like that and have lots of equipment themselves. And then hooked up the excavator to the back of the airplane with the crane and the excavator and an extra tractor he had parked over at his place and one of his helpers. We went ahead and pulled the trailer out from underneath the airplane as it was swinging there, not really knowing how much it weighs, not really knowing what the lift capacity of that excavator was. Pretty sure the crane had a good hold on it. Wasn't quite sure about the chains I had wrapped around the tail and the horizontal section there. Slowly lowered that thing on down, and once we got it down close to the ground where it was not swinging so violently, kind of ran over there like, hey, now we got it off, what's our game plan? We put some blocking, some tires, and some 6x6s underneath it, made sure we'd support it, not dent it, set it right down there on the ground, and that's where she lies until we can get the wings welded back on there. It was actually the next day that the inboard sections of the wings with the engine mounts on there arrived on that lowboy. They needed to get that lowboy back to the shop pretty quick and use it on another project, so I was out there with the excavator in the dark trying to unload those things, make sure that I'd have the lowboy freed up for them in the next morning. Just another lovely fall evening. Got those wing sections off there. The excavator did a good job picking them up. I'd assume those things were weighing at least 5,000 pounds each, maybe more. Still haven't really put a hard limit on what this excavator can lift, but it doesn't seem to disappoint, luckily. It's as long as you got the tracks lined up and it doesn't tip over, it does a pretty dang good job with those hydraulics picking stuff up. And got the inboard sections of the wings off of there. And then the next day in the daylight, it was time to start ripping apart the interior, getting all that fiberglass plastic interior sheeting off there so we could give this thing a good bath before we really dipped below freezing. We wanted to go ahead and pressure wash it with good degreaser, try to get some of that old airplane smell out of there. Don't worry, we didn't get all of it out, but at least some of it and some of the chemicals and spilt oil and all that stuff from over the years out of the airplane, get it all cleaned up so that we could go ahead and work on it during this winter, insulating, electrical, plumbing, all that good stuff. But of course, the first thing is cleaning this thing, and it's really hard to clean and pressure wash anything when it's 10 degrees outside and the water's freezing right as it comes out of that pressure washer. You wind up just painting the walls full of ice. So got all that stuff wrapped up, got it pressure washed, and that left us, well, with where it sits now, ready to design a floor plan, ready for your input on how we should design this thing. We've got some ideas and some renderings here that we've been working with. We'd love to hear your feedback on it. There's a little link in the description below that you can download a packet of the dimensions and some rough ideas of what we've got. Feel free to sketch out your ideas, leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. And that's pretty much where we're at with it. We're going to be working through this winter to insulate it, pull electrical, plumbing, all that good stuff, get the interior done. Still haven't really figured out what we're going to use for interior walls because obviously we're not drywalling the thing, and still trying to decide between spray foam or fiberglass or foam board or what we're going to do there. Spraying spray foam in 10 degrees Fahrenheit is also rather challenging. It's not really designed for those temperatures to apply it in those temps, and we want to get to work on this thing ASAP so that you guys can come up here and visit us and stay in it this summer here at the Pilot Lodge. Summer 2023, this thing will be ready to go. No matter what, we are going to be working on it day and night to get it done, but we will get it done, and we will have another update for you here soon as we get these wings back on. That's going to be another big step. Getting things reattached is probably just as hard, if not harder, than taking them off. So stay tuned for all that. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and if you cannot fly every day, fly8MikeAlpha.com. We will see you guys with the next DC-6 update.